bold, be brave, be extraordinary, be vulnerable, be real, be curious, be true, be you. Welcome to Trusting Your Gut with world-class energy intuitive Catherine McIntosh, a show designed to awaken you to enjoy the process of evolving, have fun along the way, and learn to listen to those silent in-between moments. You are the expert of your own life, and nobody knows more about the next steps to take in your journey than you. So please, listen to your gut and discover what's waiting for you to explore. Here is your host, Catherine McIntosh.
All right, my magical friends. So welcome to today's show. We are back for another episode, as we always are every week. And for those of you who don't know who are just joining us for the first time, I do take live callers. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. So I do some online coaching. I also, have a private practice where I see clients one-on-one. I also do group stuff, but my weekly group calls are so valuable because these people come with questions or with curiosity or with a desire to improve every and any area of their lives. And it's my favorite thing to sort of channel, to download, to see where they're stuck, to see where we can open the light, because we've gotten used to, in our day and age, thinking that we need to clear things out of our system in order to have a better life or get rid of. And clearing is all great, but really what creates the magic is you being all of you, is you connecting to yourself, you aligning with your truth. And so today, we're going to do a topic that I'm always nervous to talk about, but I think that we all long for it. And I'm nervous because I'm not a relationship expert, right? But I am an expert at a lot of things, but mostly at reading energy. And even though I'm really good at reading it in other people's lives, I'm not always great at it, especially when it comes to relationships. And that could be relationships with an intimate other. That could be relationships with, staff and employees. So the work environment, it can sometimes be my friendships. And so I always have struggled both in the area of my business relationships when it comes to, say, my staff, and have struggled in intimate relationships. And so I wanted to have a conversation, a transparent conversation with you about two things that I believe are the most important aspects to a thriving relationship. And that can be parent to child, right? Kid to kid, adult to adult, business to business, right? But relationships really, truly are the most valuable. And about a couple years ago, as I was sort of recalibrating and looking at knowing that my business was asking to take itself in a different direction, I sort of sat with myself and I asked, like, what is the most important thing to me? And what came out is these relationships. And so it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the contract. It wasn't about, whatever I was being hired to do. What was the most valuable to me moving forward was to create and maintain and grow these relationships that were coming into my life, right? And to date, I am the busiest I've ever been. I'm also the happiest I've ever been, and I'm not working hard to let my business grow. I'm letting the business speak for itself. I'm letting the work that I do in the world speak for itself. And so that made me want to do a show on what I think are the two most valuable aspects in relationship, no matter what relationship it is. But of course, you can apply it to intimate relationships, because the truth is we all long for a big love. And sometimes we think we find that love, and then we realize there's some misconnects, right? Or there's some misunderstandings, or there's this big love, but we don't feel safe, right? And so the two most important aspects that I believe that are essential to every thriving relationship, right? The first one is connection, right? So feeling connected, right? So when we build culture in a business, the people that are working in that organization, they love to feel connected to the mission, connected to the owner or the CEO, connected to the management, connected to those that are helping grow it, and then connected to each other, and ultimately connected to the vision or mission or culture of that business, right? So connection is something that we all long for. It's why when we're in love, that heart connection that is just like, oh my gosh. And then when it goes away, guess what? That's when the challenges come. That's when our trauma comes up. And that's when we revert into going from what worked to then functioning from a place that isn't the healthiest in a relationship. And most people think that in order to get the relationship back on track, so whether it's intimate or business, but let's use intimate for this conversation, is they think they need to communicate. But if you are trying to communicate from a disconnected place, it's pretty tough. And so people communicate to try to sort of repair that connection, but they're not connected to themselves because the relationship became the source of connection. So it's not just a connection to the other, it's a connection to the self that I believe is lacking. Now, disclaimer, as you all know, I am not a relationship expert, right? But I will tell you that through my decades of working with people from all walks of life, from all over the world, the thing that trips most of us up is our intimate relationships. And so I know that I can deal personally with stress in every area of my life. But if I am in an intimate relationship and that connection is tender or it's not where it could be, I have a really hard time doing life, right, in the normal sense of the word. And so when my relationships, when I have been in intimate relationships, when they're thriving, anything in my life I can handle. When they're not thriving, the littlest thing throws me off track. Right. So the first thing in looking at how do you sort of cultivate relationships. So if you're in a relationship right now and it isn't going where you want it, or there's questions or doubts, or there's frustrations, or you're needing to repair something that happened within the relationship or with each other, you can't repair it if you're both functioning from a disconnected place within yourselves, right? And so I tell couples that I work with all the time, look, you keep going at it with each other, and that's not working. And we've been taught that if we're not working, we better get together and go to the therapist and talk it out. And I'm not saying don't go to therapy, because I know some incredible therapists. In fact, one of my friends who I'm hoping to have on the show in the future is an incredible relationship therapist. And we've had some really cool conversations about relationships in general over the past few weeks. And so relationships really are this crux. And so we think that if we communicate, we'll get to that connection, but you can't get to that connection if you're disconnected from yourself, expecting the other person you're in a relationship to repair that hole or that gap inside yourself. Right. And so the first thing that I believe that you need to do is connect to yourself. So I tell the couples, hey, take some time apart, right? Even if you live together, even if you're married, go out, to the woman, I say, go out with your girlfriends. To the man, I say, go play golf or go hiking or go ride motorcycles. Do something where you're connecting with your friends outside of the relationship and get back to you, right? Go on a nature hike. Don't discuss the relationship when the relationship is malfunctioning. Now, a lot of therapists might disagree with me. This is just my personal opinion because what happens when you find a relationship, you are each connected to yourself, being your best self. Now, sometimes one or the other shows up pretending to be their best selves and showing a version of themselves that they can't actually maintain. Right. I know I've done this in the past in relationships. I've also been the person who was in relationships with someone who I thought that that's who they were. And then at the end, they couldn't maintain that and reverted back to a lesser state, right? A lesser high vibe. And so the second piece that I believe is probably even more important than connection is protection. And protection is this idea of feeling safe. Now, we can't rely on another 100% of the time to make us feel safe if we haven't done the work within ourselves to also feel safe. And so, what you need to do is sort of revisit what is it or how can you provide a sense of safety within yourself. And so, a lot of people say, oh, trust is so important. And I wholeheartedly agree. But a lot of people don't trust themselves, but they expect their partner to trust them. Right. And so if one of two people are coming to the relationship and they have severe trust issues, 9 times out of 10, they haven't done the work to trust themselves. So deep within them is this feeling of mistrust. And then they start to project that mistrust onto the other person. So there might be accusations of infidelity when there hasn't been infidelity. There might be accusations of lying when there hasn't been any lying. There might be, accusations of a whole plethora of things. And what is at the core of that is that the person hasn't done the work to trust what their truth is, to trust that they deserve love, to trust that it's okay to be vulnerable, to trust that there's nothing wrong. And so most of us grew up with some version of a disconnected, so I'll say trauma bond to one or both of our parents. And then we project that trauma bond onto relationship. Now, relationships in general, I believe, are the best places to grow and evolve and to do your work. Why? Because your intimate relationship brings up everything. Now, when I was married, I got divorced, I was running a company and running a business, and I knew that one of my most challenging aspects was my relationships with my staff. So I developed these really intimate, incredible relationships with my staff, and then something would go awry and I would get confused. I was not my best self. They probably weren't their best selves. Not right, not wrong, but I always believe that it's in those sort of rupture moments, as they call it in psychology, where that's where the magic is. Once the rupture happens, right, there's a chance and an opportunity and an open door for you to repair the rupture. And when a rupture is repaired, there's deeper intimacy, there's deeper connection, there's deeper understanding, there's more empathy, and there's more of an alignment within yourself so that you can bring that alignment of self to the relationship and create an even deeper exchange. And so 9 times out of 10, when I work with either individuals who are dealing with a disconnect in their relationship or a rupture, or I deal with a couple, 9 times or 10 times out of 10, there is a safety issue, right? They don't feel safe or they don't trust a certain aspect in their partner, and left unrepaired, it can cause years of damage. It can cause not going and leaning into your partner to repair. It can cause, you know, relying on your friends or talking about your relationship not necessarily in the best light to other people in your life because you can't bring that to the relationship, right? And so that is the most challenging thing, right? And look, there's no right and there's no wrong here, but what there is an invitation. And so this is just my personal belief. It's also an experience that I've had over and over and over again with people that I've worked with all over the world, is when we feel unsafe, it's usually because there is a moment in our childhood, not always, but often it happens between the ages of 0 and 3. So when we're mostly nonverbal or pre-verbal, and there's been some rupture, when some feeling of we don't feel safe between the ages of 0 and 3. And it could be simple. We're crying in the car in the back seat in our seat carrier, and our parents don't want to pull over and sort of calm us down. And so if you're the baby in that scenario, all of a sudden you start feeling like you can't rely on your primary caregivers. And when it happens between the ages of 0 and 3, it could be you had a babysitter and your parents went out for a night and you were 2 years old, and the babysitter let you cry or left you in the dark, or didn't take care of you the way that felt safe. That could be a rupture in your sort of nervous system that all of a sudden starts sending fight or flight warning signs that this is no longer safe, this person, this environment, this experience. And so my son, actually, as a young child, I believe he was 2 or 3, he was at his he was in a daycare, and we loved this woman so much. She was such an incredible human. We had a really great relationship with her. And one day, while all of the kids were napping, I think she had like 12 kids at the time, 8 to 12. And my son loved going there, loved it. And so at one point, it was nap time. All the kids went down for nap. Excuse me. Yeah, so we'll talk about yawning in a second. But, my son went down for a nap, and mid-nap, he woke up, and he couldn't find the woman who owned the daycare. It was out of her home, and she was in the garage, cleaning out the garage, doing things in the backyard, and he kinda looked all over the house and couldn't find her, and he had this sudden panic that that he was abandoned. And so he started crying at the top of his lungs, right? And it took him days to recover. Now, after that happened, our son didn't like to be left alone. So he didn't mind going to his daycare. He didn't mind if his dad or I were, in the house or somewhere in the vicinity. But if one of us was leaving, it brought up these giant feelings of anxiety. And so you can't process verbally a trauma that occurred in your system non-verbally. I'm going to say that again because I believe it's really important. You can't process verbally a trauma that happened in your body non-verbally or pre-verbally. So non-verbal is the energy without words. Pre-verbal is the energy before you developed speech, right? Before you developed sort of the mental and sort of verbal capacity of being able to speak. And a lot of kids really are pre-verbal, right? probably farther along. Like my son really wasn't very verbal until after he was 4 years old. And I did a radio show on parenting, on kids, on being on the spectrum, and the gift that being on the spectrum is. So if you want to check out that show, it's Let's Talk About Spectrum. Really powerful, especially if you're a parent or if you yourself have dealt with being diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, or you struggle with emotional anxiety or social anxiety. That show is probably for you. So I would check it out. And so, as we navigate these sensations in relationship that we all long for, so connection and protection, one of the biggest things that I think is so valuable, that is probably undervalued or not talked about as much, is that you can't receive what you're not willing to be. So if you're not willing to trust you, you cannot receive somebody trusting you. So you'll start to doubt them. You'll start to project on them. You'll start to blame them. You might have feelings of shame that arise from your past, right? And I believe, look, I've worked with like some of the most beautiful people in the world, and they still deal with insecurity, right? They deal with feelings of shame. They deal with feelings of not feeling good enough. And most of us were taught, whether in psychology or school or from our parents or from therapy, that, or even from healers, that, oh, let's get rid of the trauma. And I want to have a different conversation with you. And I might say something that many people might disagree on, and that's okay. But I don't believe that we can ever truly get rid of the trauma in our bodies. But I do believe that we can change our relationship to the trauma, because the trauma is an event that happened in your life, right? You can't just erase it completely, right? I am no stranger to trauma, right? I had a really traumatic childhood, felt unsafe most of my childhood. I had very traumatic relationships in my 20s, felt unsafe most of my childhood. And I always overcompensated for the people I was in relationship with, because I went, oh, well, they had a terrible childhood. I'm like, well, so did I. But I learned to navigate. And look, we're never done growing and learning. And I have my blind spots, like we all do. But the point is that most people are trying to get rid of the trauma, but it's something that happened to you. So you can't necessarily get rid of it. You'll always have some form of a memory of it. But is the memory throwing you into fight or flight? Or is the memory like you're watching a movie and you're fascinated by the scene that you're watching? And so if you are traumatized, or that story still has a charge to it, chances are that charge is living in your body as a disconnect. And every disconnect we have disconnects or sort of scatters our parasympathetic nervous system's ability to be in a state of calm and ease and grace and space and surrender. And so you might be in an amazing place in your life, and life is thriving and everything's working and you love life, and all of a sudden you meet somebody. And this somebody is somebody really special, and it's an experience you've never had before. Well, guess what? All of your stuff is going to come to the surface. And it's coming to the surface because it's trying to heal the things that you weren't able to heal verbally or in therapy or through life. And it's that relationship that activates the traumas that are still living in your cellular body, even if you did therapy, even if you processed it. When you get into those intimate relationships, guess what? All of our stuff comes to the surface, and it is not wrong. It's not wrong, right? It really isn't wrong. But what it is an opportunity for you to connect and protect. So for you to connect to yourself, to feel protected, to feel safe within yourself. And so a lot of us as kids had a moment, a small moment or a big moment in which we didn't feel safe, right? And that in that not feeling safe, we then project that it's somebody else's job to make us feel safe. It's somebody else's job to connect to us. It's our job to connect to our truth. It's our job to help ourselves make ourselves feel safe. And then you can come and sort of repair the rupture in the relationship. And then you can use and work with your partner to create sort of boundaries in which you feel safe, to open up the door and open up the channel to release out of the physical body the residual energies that have constantly been there, even when you're alone, but now they get activated. And in their activation, it feels like fight or flight. And there's two other ones that are talked about, which is fawn or freeze. So fawn is the energy of a people pleaser, right? It's the energy of doing whatever you can to make sure the other person isn't. And that's sort of my default. My default is to go into freeze, go into people pleasing. Oh, you have a trauma wound. Okay, because I've healed for the most part my trauma wounds, except for this piece, which is I'm going to abandon myself so you don't feel abandoned, so then you feel safe, so then we can have that connection because I really crave that connection. But all of a sudden we try to connect and guess who's not there? Me, right? And so if this pattern resonates with you, or some form of a pattern that you can identify that constantly happens to you, there's good news. It's about starting to go within. And we're going to talk after the break about a few things that you can do to really sort of repair that disconnect within yourself. And I believe that there are really easy ways to heal and repair and reconnect to yourself and then emerge even greater in the process. Right. And so we all long for big, big, big love. We all long for connection. We all long to feel safe. And yet most of us are terrified of getting our heart broken. We're terrified of being abandoned. We're terrified of rejection. And so we will reject or abandon ourselves in order to maintain a connection. Or we'll reject the other person first so that they don't reject us, right? Or we'll reject ourselves, right? So that we don't have to deal with the other person rejecting us. All forms of trying to keep ourselves safe, but it's not really truly intimacy. It's intimacy with a condition, right? It's connection with a condition. And the good news is there is a way to change it. So we'll talk more about that when we come back after the break. So stay tuned and we'll be back soon.
Times TV.
Do you trust you? Do you trust your body? What if the key to unlocking the weight, pain, suffering, fear, anxiety, addictions, traumas, and sorrows was already inside of you? Learn to love the skin you are in so you can create the body, business, and life you love. Everyone always says you can't explain what Catherine does, you just have to experience it. From Hollywood actors to New York Times best-selling authors to some of the world's wealthiest and most successful, no two experiences are the same. For private sessions, online courses, live events, and the latest book Jack Canfield calls Game Changer and should be required reading for everyone, go to CatherineMcIntosh.com. KATHERINEMCINTOSH.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Okay, my magical friends, so welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us. And if you are just joining us, we are talking about relationship and the two most important aspects that I believe are foundational to every healthy relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship, a work relationship, a friendship, parent, child relationship. Almost all relationships thrive when these two things are in place. And it's not communication, right? The first one is connection, and the second one is protection and that energy of feeling safe. And so I put together sort of the three most valuable things that I think that if you are missing that connection or missing that feeling of protection, what you can do about it to change, right? And so the first one, and this I believe is really important, is you have to believe in yourself. So I was talking to a good friend of mine who also happens to be a client who's creating and has created a phenomenal product that hasn't come to market yet. I was able to test drive it. I've actually been test driving it. It's a skincare product for women of a certain age. and my skin has been feeling incredible. So when that product comes out, I will announce it. I highly believe in it. I believe in her. And I said to her, I said, what did you do different with this product than any other business adventure or product that you've created in the past? And she goes, I never stopped believing in it. And so this is such a key aspect to the foundation of living a healthy, alive, fantastic life. We did not come here to live a mediocre life. We really didn't. My yoga teacher, Coco, I'm like, yeah, we did not come here to live a mediocre life. We came here to live a fantastic life, to live a life that lights you up, to explore, to experience, to enjoy the process of what it's like to be a human in a physical body at this time. And I will tell you, if you've been going through a lot of crazy times, you are not alone. It is insane on the planet. It's insane astrologically. It's insane politically. It's insane, in certain parts of the world in terms of safety. Talk about safety, right? And Gabor Mate, actually beautiful, amazing human who also talks about the human condition and trauma. He grew up, I believe, in Auschwitz, in a war zone, right? And so he grew up with severe trauma in his system and not feeling safe. And when you have had a really deep wound, and look, this wound can be like the example of my son in preschool, like in daycare, right? That trauma, although to us it might seem, oh, that was no big deal, she was still there. In his system, it was a huge deal that has created kind of a big abandonment wound in his world, right? And look, there's other like moments of abandonment that he's also experienced. His dad and I separated when he was quite young, right? And so it doesn't matter what the wounding is, if you don't repair that wounding within yourself, you will always struggle in intimate relationships because you will either function from shame, which is I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, or you'll function from I'm better, right? I'm better than you are and I know best. And the truth is, we don't always know best. So I tend to go to the grandiose exchange, like that's my survival mechanism because I don't want to get hurt. I know a lot of other people go immediately to shame. And so it doesn't matter which sort of side you function from, this idea about believing in yourself, believing you're good enough, believing it's not your fault you have these wounds, believing that you deserve a big love, that it's safe, right? But guess what? It's safe because you choose to do the work to make yourself feel safe. No one can make you feel safe if you don't. So if any of you have ever had somebody in your life that's like, you're lying to me, you're not telling me the truth, and you're like, yeah, I actually am, and they don't believe you, is because they have something inside of themselves where they don't believe themselves. And because they're in fight or flight, because they feel unsafe, they are projecting onto you that you're doing something because that's the way that they survived, right? So it's really interesting information. And so how do you cultivate a belief in yourself? It's not always a fake it till you make it, but it is repeating a new pattern. You can't just go, okay, I'm going to believe in myself. It's all going to be good. Because life happens. Triggers happen. People happen. Assholes happen. Sorry, should I say that? Not say that. But the point is that we can't control our environment. We can only control not even the way we react to our environment, but the actions we take or the words we speak or the energy we are after our initial reaction, right? And so to believe in yourself, you have to sort of do some repetitive sort of exercises or repetitive sort of belief, rerouting your belief system. And that belief in yourself is that you're worthy. The belief in yourself is that you're enough. The belief in yourself is that you deserve it, that you matter. So whatever your wounding is, and most of us function from one of three core wounds, which is I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not worthy. I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not worthy. And then it sort of spirals from there. And so the trick is to repeat, not just verbally, right? Not just mentally, not just energetically, but physically also in your whole body, this belief that you are enough, that you are worthy. And so this idea that we should be able to get rid of our fears, we should be able to get rid of our unworthiness, I don't think is very kind. What I think repairs it and what I think begins to heal it and change the story is, instead of focusing all your energy on getting rid of it, because when you focus on getting rid of something, all of a sudden you start attracting more things that you need to get rid of. When you focus on changing things, all of a sudden you attract more things that you need to change. But if you start to focus on believing you're enough, believing there's good in the world, changing the relationship to the not enough, changing the relationship to the fear, changing the relationship to judgment, changing the relationship to insecurity. And so you begin to cultivate this sort of deep belief system where something can come up and go, oh, I'm not worthy. And you're like, I actually know that that's a survival instinct. That's a coping mechanism. And I know in my heart, it's not true. Right. And so a lot of people want to process their trauma to understand. I don't believe that we can understand why someone hurt us. What I do believe we can do is see the hurt and realize that it's not our fault, right? And so when we adopt this idea that it's our fault, we create a lot of shame. Now, I'm not saying don't take responsibility when you actually might be the responsible party that did hurt somebody, right? So this is about really in a sort of action oriented, but more in an energetic orientation, cultivating a new relationship with believing in yourself, right? The amount of famous people that I've worked with that I think are the most beautiful, sexy, alive, fascinating, and they come in and they are head hanging, they don't feel good enough, they, are struggling internally, they're struggling mentally. It's such, and it's like, wow, how can we change this dialogue? So, number one, find ways to change the dialogue, to change your relationship with believing in yourself, knowing that your traumas are not your fault, knowing that you can rewire and change the story and then change the pattern that's embedded in the cells of your body. And when we change it on a cellular level, the next time you might get triggered, you're going to respond differently to your initial reaction, right? So I've got my notes just so I can do this in a way that works, right? The second one that I think is really, really, really important, really, really, really important, and I see this more often than not, people coming to me with something deep that they want to work on or heal or change, or their physical body is falling apart, is this people pleasing. Most of us, especially if we have been deeply embedded in trauma most of our lives, right, we become really good people pleasers. And when you're a good people pleaser, you're not good at taking care of yourself. You're good at taking care of other people and sacrificing yourself in the process. And when you're a people pleaser, guess what? Your nervous system is in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, right? And so I think that we have to learn to fire our people pleaser, right? I have this incredible online course where you get weekly live calls with me. We get on Zoom. We kind of ask questions. We share our celebrations and ahas. And the people that are in this course, and anyone can join at any time, it is on a wait list, but because you're listening to my show, I'm going to share a link where you can get access to a free masterclass at the end of this, okay? And that masterclass is going to give you some really key details to help you sort of navigate, shift, and change your desire or your default mechanism to go into people pleasing mode. Because as a people pleaser, you can't feel safe when you're worrying about everybody else. You can't always believe or have time to believe in yourself. You're doing everything you can to try to help others feel safe, well, then possibly not abandoning you, and then you don't feel safe, right? And that's kind of my biggest wound, is I want to make sure that other people know that their trauma didn't define them and that there's a way to heal it. But in the process of trying to show up for others, I tend to abandon myself. So I created this online course called People Pleasing, the Life Shift Awakening System. And in attempts to change the dialogue that we're all having on the planet with our self-esteem, with our sense of safety, with our sense of protection, right? And with our sense of connection to the self, right? Awareness of what is important to you. So, number one, right, was, oh God, what is it? My brain is not, belief in yourself. Number 2 is really navigating and taking a good hard look at your people pleaser and being willing to change that program, right? You could also call it codependent, right? Because it does have an element of codependency when you're a people pleaser, right? Because you don't want the relationship to go away. You don't want to be abandoned. You don't want to be rejected. And so that's the second one. And then the third one that I believe is one of the most important, and I believe it's starting to get talked about a lot now, is we need to learn how to healthfully repair our nervous systems. Because most of our nervous systems all over the world, especially since COVID, have gotten sort of activated. And now we've been living in this anxiety, in the shame, in this trauma, in this not feeling safe, right? In this aloneness, because we're afraid to connect. And so alone is our survival mechanism, but we all thrive on connection, whether that's connecting to the earth, connecting to our spirits, connecting to others, connecting to a purpose. Connection is so important. And so I believe that we need to learn to rewire our nervous systems. And there's some really easy things that if you do them consistently, 3 to 5 minutes a day, it can literally change your entire world. I'm evidence of that. I had a very traumatic childhood. And with these 3 to 5, sometimes 10 minutes a day, these movements, right? Working with the vagus nerve, working with the tailbone, working with the energy in the spine, and then rewriting the story. So those are the 3 things that I suggest: is belief in yourself, stop people pleasing, and 3, heal your nervous system. Those are going to get you out of fight or flight, out of fawn or freeze, and into a thriving place. And so if you are curious, right, and you would like to check out this free masterclass that I call the Life Shift Awakening System. Now, I have a wait list on my website, but because you are listening to this radio show, I'm going to give you instant access to this free masterclass. And you can get it by going to my website, catherinemcintosh.com, and then you have to do /, and it's LSASMC. So Life Shift Awakening System Masterclass. So all capitals, catherinemcintosh.com / L, so capital L, capital S, capital A, capital S, capital M, capital C. LSASMC. So check it out. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you know that you deserve the world, that you are more magical than anyone knows, that you deserve to believe in yourself, you deserve to feel safe, and you deserve to feel connected and not alone. Because the truth is, you're never alone when you are connected to your highest self, when you are connected to the source of life and the aliveness and the abundance. So my friends, please know, wherever you are in the world and wherever you are on your journey, you're not alone. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to share this with someone you think it would be important to share it with. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
Catherine is not a medical practitioner nor a licensed therapist. She has strong opinions and will express them, and truly believes that you are your best advocate for any and every area of your life. If you need medical advice, please consult your physician.